Welcome to the secret world of human trafficking. I'm your host, David J. Story. I'm also the author of the Omega book series, researcher, and advocate committed to exposing one of the world's fastest growing criminal enterprise. Each episode is dedicated to educating, raising awareness, and giving a voice to those working to combat human trafficking and to those whose lives have been affected by it. Today, we're joined by someone with a unique perspective to this issue. Through their knowledge, experience, and personal journey, they'll help us better understand the realities of human trafficking, the challenges we face, and the work being done to bring hope, justice, and healing. Whether you're listening for the first time or you've been with us from the beginning, thank you for being a part of this mission. For more educational resources, articles, podcast episodes, and information about my books, visit davidjstory.com. Now, let's begin today's conversation. It is my privilege to welcome today's guest. Well, here we are with our next guest. Won't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. And David, I want to say thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Thank you for
My name is Caroline Pugh-Roberts, and I was trafficked for 8 years. And the thing is, for me, I was 35 when I was trafficked. And this is important because I spoke the better part of 5 languages. I had traveled the world extensively. I'm a skydiving instructor. I held a Canadian record. I have a silver medal from the Canadian Nationals in skydiving. So I wasn't young and naive. So if it can happen to me, imagine how easily it can happen to a 12-year-old who has no life experience. It's really important that people realize that it doesn't just happen to 12-year-olds, but that how easily it will happen to a 12-year-old. I had been married to a South African man who went to Thailand. He was a registered Thai massage therapist, and he went to get more education, and the tsunami hit, and he disappeared. Within the next 6 months, I lost my mother and my 2 best friends and my husband. Now, I spent 7 years looking for him because the Thai authorities had been sending me photos of bodies that had been in the water for weeks trying to identify him, and I couldn't. I didn't find him. And so I was, with hindsight, realized that I was struggling with clinical depression and something called complicated grief. My friend's husband introduced me to his best friend. It was winter. I'm in Canada, so there was lots of snow, and he would always clear my car off. I never, ever got into a cold car, and he told me that everything was going to be okay. And psychologically, I needed that. And I now know also in hindsight that there were ulterior motives. He did what's called the lover boy / Romeo pimp scenario, where he love bombarded me. He always bought me gifts. I had designer clothing. I had emeralds. I had everything. And he told me it was going to be okay. Within 6 months, he asked me to move in with him, and I did because I needed the help. And I was a puddle. But within about another month, the sheriff had rocked up at our door where we were living. Now here, when the sheriff rocks up, it's done. The locks are changed. And he said to me it was now my turn to take care of the family. And that's what they're calling it now, a family. And it's psychological. They work off of Maslow's hierarchy, whether they realize it or not. You know, we need our safety. We need our basic things. And one of them is having family and a sense of safety. And he told me it was now my turn to take care of the family, which entailed me going to work in the strip bars. Now, when I was 14, I lost my virginity to a rape. I then had another rape after that. And at 18, I was raped and I had to kill him. It was me or him. I pushed him out a window and we were 8 floors up. So psychologically, I was already groomed, knowing that my body was for the taking. And when he told me I was working in the strip bars, I wasn't as shocked as I should have been. Now, here in the strip bars, excuse me, you have to do a minimum of 4 hours on the floor and a minimum of 3 stage shows. And you pay for the privilege of working in strip bars here. You don't get paid to work in them. So you have to pay a DJ fee. You have to pay if you have a child care. You have to pay your driver. So you can walk in the door already $100 in the hole. And we have quotas. Our traffickers give us quotas. Now, back then, mine was $500 a day, which was a fair amount of money.
Yeah.
And so you have to do your stage shows. Your first song, you're fully clothed. The second song, it's a top or a bottom comes off. And the third song, you're fully naked. And if you haven't tipped the DJ even more, he'll start making terrible sounds on the microphone, like farting noises. And it sounds like you're doing it on stage. Excuse me. So that's even more money prior to making a sense. And you've got young guys, they think they're being funny, trying to outdo each other, yelling, my grandmother's got nicer boobs than you. And all the while, you have to smile because the stage is considered advertising. So
Mhm.
you'll get off the stage and then you walk around the floor and you go up to the tables and you ask the guys, would you like a dance? And you're hoping that they will take you into the back where the sofas are and sexually assault you. Because anybody who's been to a strip bar who tells you that there isn't other stuff going on is A, either lying, or B, has never been to a strip bar. So a song is $20 per song, and a song is roughly 4 to 5 minutes. And the traffickers slash pimps, I don't care what you choose to call them, are sitting out there and they're counting the amount of songs that you're doing. So you come back from the back and you can't hide money because they know. So you're handing over the money. And once you've been in a strip bar long enough, you can see who's running who and who's being run by who. Now,
Mhm.
I didn't drink. I didn't drug. So prior to that, I had been an addict and I had been clean 20 years, 20 years when I met him. And
Mm.
now the only way I could stay on stage and handle that was to be very drunk. So now I'm drinking. And one night when I was lying on the floor, because I always had to be within eyesight of him and I had to sleep on the floor, he woke me up and he put a crack pipe in my face. And he said, if I didn't take a hit on this crack pipe, I would never be allowed to sleep again. I'm an addict. I'll always be an addict, okay? It didn't matter that I was clean 20 years. One
Yeah.
hit is too much and one hit is not enough. So now I'm right back where I started. I'm drinking, I'm smoking crack, and I'm in a strip bar. And by this stage now, I have lost all my friends. I have no family, and he's taken all my identification. Now I'm South African born. So for me to get my Canadian citizenship documents back, I needed proof of all that. And I didn't have any of that. And we have what's called a SIN card. I don't know what you have in the States. But without a SIM card in Canada, you don't exist.
Mhm.
So I now don't exist. I can't get health care. I can't get help. I don't. And prior to that, I had my life together. Like I was together. So I didn't know about social service agencies because I didn't need to know about them. So I'm working in the strip bars. This is so degrading. So I've seen every conceivable act up to and including fisting in strip bars. And the
Wow.
older you get, it's horrific. It really is. And the strip bars that I was in, they didn't care how old the girls were, as long as their identification was passable. I mean, I was working with a girl who was 14. Her
Mm.
first song, she was so naive that at the end of the dance, the guy said to her, "You know, you're supposed to take your clothes off, right?" This girl, I have followed her through the years. She's never held a real job. She has no education. She left school before 14. And all she's ever done is dance in strip bars. So this industry has a very short shelf life, okay? A very short shelf life.
Yeah.
And I have yet to meet a single person who's gotten out with something to show for it. And when I say show for it, I don't mean a car or even a house. I'm talking about a retirement. I'm talking about stuff because if you've never held another job, you're not going to get another one without going back to college, and you have to have the money to do that. So I've never seen anyone successfully exit with something to show for it other than PTSD and an addiction. So,
Mhm.
excuse me, I'm in the bars and remember this is 8 years. I'm going to abbreviate 8 years because it was a long, long time. We had been evicted from several other places and now I'm living in the motels, and there's a strip of motels where I live on the street up the road from where I live now. And they are filthy, filthy motels. The one room I was in one time, the room next to me, there was an eviction and they had been in there for 3 days and they pulled out 200 used syringes out of that room. This is the environment
Wow.
I'm now living in. And I never in my life, I could conceive of living in that environment by now. But by now, in my mind, he was the only reason I was alive. He was why I ate. He was why I existed. So I just had to roll with the punches. I had lost everything I owned, but I did still have my mother's ashes. And I was so messed up that I would sleep. My mom's ashes weren't even in an urn. They were still in the box that I got them from the funeral home from. And I would sleep holding my mother's ashes. And then one day they disappeared.
Mm.
To this day, I don't know where my mom is. I don't even have my mother's ashes to this day. And I then ran. For the first time ever, I phoned a domestic violence shelter and they could hear him screaming at me in the background. And they said to me, get in a cab and come to us. We'll pay for the cab, which I did. But when I got there, they had no room for me. So who was I going to go back to? The only person I knew in the world by now, because all my friends were gone, everything was gone. I did not know anybody. But prior to that, one of the houses, I'm sorry, I struggle with chronology at times, okay? One of the houses we lived in, I tried to run away and he broke all my toes, so I couldn't walk. So, of course, I couldn't go into the bars. And that's when he started
Mhm.
bringing the men home. But he had taken all the doors off the inside of the house. So I couldn't hide money. I couldn't do anything. And there's something called rooting, which the traffickers do to the women. And after they've seen a client, and when I say client, I'm being incredibly diplomatic, okay? They
Right.
root around inside her to see that she's hidden no money, to make sure she's hidden no money. You cannot hide the money. And I would then, because at one point, his ex-wife rocked up at our door at about 3 in the morning with their 7-year-old son and said she couldn't handle him anymore. Would she take him? And he said no. I could not look at the 7-year-old child who had tears coming down his eyes, his worldly possessions around it, and say no. So I brought this child in. But now I'm trapped. We call it invisible chains. There's different kinds, but that was one of my invisible chains.
Mhm.
And ironically enough, me having that child there gave me a tad more freedom in that he would leave for days because he knew I wouldn't disappear because I wouldn't leave that child. But he would leave us with no food. So I would get on my bicycle with broken toes and ride around the town, the city, and climb into dumpsters, trying to find unopened products, sanitary products, and unopened food to feed myself and this child. This is now where my world is and how come I was so dependent on him because I couldn't look after myself even properly at this time. So the motels, they were horrific. They were absolutely horrific. I did manage to get this child back to his mom, but because he wouldn't answer the phone because he didn't want to have to be held responsible for anything, this child believed that his dad didn't want him either or talk to him. And I would not let this kid know that that's where his dad was at. And I would tell this child that his dad wasn't answering the phone because he was mad at me, which made the kid angry at me. So
Mhm.
I'm raising this child that doesn't like me because I'm the reason his father doesn't talk to him. Meanwhile, that's not actually true. He's living in this environment where food is coming from dumpsters. We've got no electricity at one point. I was washing everything by hand and cooking stuff on a barbecue outside to make sure he was okay. When I got this kid, he could barely read or write. He couldn't tie his shoes. Just so you know it, by the end of it, he did graduate with honors from high school, okay? But
Right.
I went through hell with this child. I was the wicked stepmom as far as he was concerned, but I was not going to let this child fall through the cracks. Was not going to let it happen. So eventually I did get this child back to his mother who'd gotten her act together. And it was in the nick of time because things were bad, but they got really bad after that. The one motel, it weren't even hotels, they were motels. Guys would chase me across the parking lots at night into my room and try and kick the door down to get to me. I mean, I'd wake up in the morning and there'd be footprints on the outside of the door where they'd been trying to get to me.
Mm.
And it would be so bad that when he eventually walked in the door, I'd be, oh, thank God. I'd be grateful that this terrible person walked in the door. I'd be relieved. You know, people often say to me about girls that are staying with traffickers, why does she stay? And I'll tell them because often what the trafficker's doing is not as bad as what daddy was doing. You know, the trafficker is a step up. She's actually doing better than she was, but they don't clue into that until somebody lays it out for them because they can't
Mhm.
comprehend it. And I'm glad they can't because that means they didn't go through it, but they need to know because you got to check your bias. I created a training for the hospitals, the teaching hospital here, because at one point I was hospitalized and the ward was so busy that my bed was opposite the nursing stations in the corridor. And he would come and remove me from my bed in front of the nurses and then bring me back. And no one clued in, albeit that they were not aware of trafficking back then, but something was clearly not okay. And no one picked up on it, or if they did, no one did anything about it. So for 10 years afterwards, I walked hospital corridors, shoving letters under administrative doors, making phone calls, and all I ever got was, and this pertains to us how? I have finally managed to gather a group of doctors that are younger who get it. And we've created curriculum which is mandatory for all first-year residents at the hospital here. And they
Mm.
can't be doctors until they take our training on human trafficking. And one of the big things that I really pushed was how do you separate a minor from a guardian or a parent if the doctor thinks there's something afoot or something not kosher? And so what we've done is we've trained radiologists to ask the correct questions from a trauma-informed perspective. So the doctor will order a non-existent x-ray because the parent can't or the guardian cannot go in there. So that's how we have separating minors from guardians so that we can maybe get to these children. And it's important too, because like during COVID, I was talking to somebody about this earlier. During COVID, I knew that there was going to be a lot of familial trafficking because these children were stuck with their parents. And the emergency room doctors and the nurses and general practitioners were not trained in this area. Anyways, I digress. We, trafficking victims, believe that we love our traffickers and that our traffickers love us when it's a lover boy pimp scenario, or a parent or a guardian. Okay, we love them and
Mhm.
we believe that they love us. Now, traffickers make on average $350,000 a year off of each person, and they have what they call a stable. And a stable can be two, three, four, five women. I'm saying women, and because it is overwhelmingly women, but there are a lot of trafficked men and boys, and I work with them. So please know I'm including men and boys in this. Okay, I recognized eventually, but it took me 2 years of being out because the word trafficking was not in my vocabulary. And we see this with a lot of victims. They don't know what they're being trafficked. They don't know what trafficking is. And if back then, if you'd said to me, your partner is trafficking you, I would have said, F you. My partner loves me, and my partner would not do that to me. And you would have pushed me away. So when I talk to people about working with victims, I say to them, never tell somebody they're being trafficked because you could lose them. This is something they have to understand for themselves. You can say something like, are you being hurt? Are you eating? Are you free to leave when you want? Or when last did you eat? And start getting them to plant the seeds, I guess, because you
Mhm.
do not want to push a victim away and have them never come back. Am I making sense?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
100%.
Thank you. So I've forgotten where I was. I digressed again. I'm sorry. So in the motels, and I was terrified. That's right. So I was terrified, but I would be relieved when he came in because he was my savior. And I genuinely believed he was the only reason I was still alive. I had gone to that place psychologically that he was my savior. Now, I then lost my mother's ashes and ran again to the shelter, and they had a bed for me. But unfortunately, because of the prior incident, he knew where I was and then proceeded to go up to the shelter and throw what was left of my belongings. And when I say belongings, I had some clothes. That's all I owned at the
Mhm.
building. And they brought me out from my room into the room where all the cameras were and said, do you know this man? And I said, yes, that's him. But remember, I still didn't know I was being trafficked. I thought that I wasn't being treated right. And the staff weren't trained on trafficking yet either back then. So then they spoke through the microphones and told him that he had to leave the premises or they were going to call the police, at which point he did. But they then said to me that I had to leave because my presence there endangered all the other women.
Mm.
So they moved me to another shelter. But it was at that, these are domestic violence shelters. These are not safe houses, which are specific for human trafficking. 2 days into that stay, I was admitted to hospital with what was to become a long battle with colitis. And we see a lot of the victims of trafficking struggling with issues like colitis and Crohn's and stuff because our immune system attacks ourselves.
Mhm.
And that's when I was being removed from my bed. I was then discharged. I had nowhere to go. I was left on the front steps of the hospital, the clothes on my back, and not a single person in the world that I knew I could call except him. Now, which I did because where else was I going to go? But now he's not happy with me. He's really not happy with me and decides that I don't have the right to have a roof anymore and would make me live and work out of the car. And on good nights, he would park in a park that had a porta poo. That was a good night for me. That was really great. And I'll never forget the one night he parked under a tree that had caterpillar nests in it. And
Mhm.
one of the caterpillars fell out down in my pants between the crack of my bum. And I felt this thing and I squished it. I had nothing to clean it with. I
Wow.
had I had squished caterpillar in my butt and nothing to clean it with. And this went on for some time until he decided that I had behaved enough and I was allowed to have a roof again. So back into the filthy motels I went and it started all over again. The bars are horrific places uh, when I do my speech publicly, I'd say, I don't know how many of you have been into a strip bar, and I don't want to know. But on the surface, it looks like everybody's partying and everything, but it's a very, very bad scene underneath because we all have quotas. We're in competition with each other. And if we don't make our quota, we could get hurt. So we're competing with each other. The girls would put things like muscle creams on our G-strings. So when you put it on, it hurts you, it burnt you. They would defecate and urinate in your clothes in the back. They would tell customers, again, I'm being diplomatic, that you had
Mhm.
HIV and stuff like that, trying to cut you out. So the environment, even though ostensibly it looks beautiful, it's not. It's a cutthroat, vicious environment, and everyone is out to beat each other. Like we have stage names. Most of us didn't even know each other's real names because it wasn't safe. None of
Mm.
us was safe to be honest with each other because they could turn on you. So I'm back in the bars, back again. But this time it's getting really bad now. My addiction is bad, and I'm my quota. And I'm homeless, okay? When you're in a motel, people think, oh, you're not homeless, but you are because every day you have to get up and start finding that money again. And you have to leave with your possessions because you haven't paid for the room. So every day it's just a fight. I've got to come up with my quota. I've got to find the money for my room and I've got to pay for my addiction. And then I found out about the Salvation Army. So I ran there, but he found me and he told me he loved me and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, he loves me. He wants me back. So I went back. It took me 2 years to get away from him. The final time for me was I went back to the Salvation Army 3 times, and that's not a good environment, okay, because the traffickers prey on the women there and the vulnerable. They're waiting outside the Salvation Army shelters. Any of the shelters, they're waiting because there's prime and fresh meat in their words. So he chased me up a fire escape, and an alert security guard picked up on it and got me behind a locked door. And the social worker there phoned the shelter and asked if I could go back, and they let me.
That's
Now,
good.
yes, but here you've got 24 days in a shelter. How do you get your life back together in 24 days when the first time in 8 years you're allowed to sleep? All I wanted to do was sleep, but I couldn't because I had 24 days. I had no identification, no way to get it. I had no friends, I had no family, and I got to try and get my life back together. So in here, you can get into government housing if you go through a domestic violence shelter. But in order to get that, you have to get a letter from your landlord stating you were living with your abuser. What if your landlord was your abuser? I saw a woman who'd been on life support go back to their abuser and their traffickers because they couldn't get that letter. Me, in my infinite wisdom, thought, oh, I'll go to the motels and ask them for the letter. All of them except for one said no. And the one that didn't say no blackmailed me and said if I didn't find money to give him, he was going to tell my trafficker what I was doing. So I had to go back into the bar and find that money. It was $100. And back then, that was a big, big money, okay? But he took pity on me and gave me the letter once I gave him the $100. So I was able to get housing. Now, the day they gave me the keys for my housing, I wept so hard that they had to come from behind the desk and physically hold me up. I moved into that apartment. I didn't have a fork. I didn't have a spoon. I didn't have a pillow. I had nothing but the clothes on my back. I slept on the floor. But you know what? I had keys that were mine. They were mine, and no one could take them from me. About 2 months into that stay, I went on my balcony. I was on the second floor. It was close to the ground. I found a bag I'd never seen before. And I opened that bag, and in it were gloves, duct tape, and a gun. Now, mine was gang associated, so I knew I was being warned. I knew. But I phoned the police because what was I going to do with this gun, right? And they came in and they weren't the least bit perturbed. They were like, "Oh, it's a rape kit or a home invasion kit," because I did not disclose. Oh, we find guys with these kits all the time. That's the reality for any woman walking around. Never mind a trafficking or domestic violence woman. Men, they say, are walking around with these kits all the time. That's our reality, just being alive. Anyways, I said to housing, you got to move me, man. You got to move me. I'm not safe here. And that took 2 months of me living in abject terror, thinking I was hearing stuff on the balcony that actually wasn't there. But I didn't know that because I wasn't going to go look. Eventually, they moved me to an apartment that was on the 8th floor. But the guy I had pushed out a window was out of the 8th floor window. So I couldn't go on that balcony either because it was bringing back all these memories. Anyways, I then was able to sleep and I slept for probably a year. I just slept. And then I decided I got to do something with my life and I got to take purpose from this pain. But I still didn't recognize that I'd been trafficked. I did not self-identify. And so I went and got my grade 12, even though I had traveled the world extensively. But because of that, I never finished my schooling. And I went to college. And at college, I took Human Services Foundations and I started learning what had happened to me, how it had happened to me, and through great self-introspection, why. It was so that I could do the work, taking purpose from pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I did general arts and science, I did Human Services Foundations, then I went on to do social service worker. And all the while, I had been volunteering at the Salvation Army at the back of the building where it was Correctional and Justice Services. And they worked because it was illegal back then to sell sex and it was illegal to purchase it. Canada now has its own version of the Nordic model, and I'll get into that. But so I worked with the court mandated diversion programs and while I was in school. So the day that I finished school, I walked back into Salvation Army Correctional and Justice Services employed. It was fantastic. And I then worked exclusively with those who had been, are being, or at high risk of being trafficked. And I created a exit and aftercare program because it's really hard to exit when you don't know anybody and you don't know anything else. And when you're 12, you don't know that there is anything else. It's like telling
Mm-hmm.
someone who's blind from birth what the color blue is. So it was my program was based on 3 pillars. And the first pillar was broadening horizons. And I would take them camping. I would teach them to drive. I would take them to museums, to show them that there was more to life and that life can actually be pretty good. The second pillar was helping them transition. No, the first pillar was transformational relationships. So they had relationships with people who wanted nothing from them, only for. The second pillar was broadening horizons. And the third pillar is helping them transition back into mainstream society, because the skill set required to survive in that life doesn't do well in the boardroom at all. Okay. Yes, we have transferable skills, but we have to learn how to transfer them appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
And to that end, I would teach them, I would tutor them through, I would tutor them through grade 12, as long as it wasn't math. And then I tutored several of them through college. And I created collaborations with two organizations. One of them was Goodwill, which is a secondhand store, who had the floor where the clothes were sold. So they would take these people and give them work experience on the floor. So they had something for a resume. Then there was another organization called Pathways we formed collaborations with, who would train them in careers like custodial services or business admin. So they had something to go forward with and they didn't have to go back. They
Mm-hmm.
had something concrete to work with. And it was highly successful. I have left there now and started my own organization, but this was what I did during that time there. And it was phenomenal. I watched people blossom. So the one woman, one day I hadn't heard from her a while and I called her and I said, I haven't heard from you in a bit. And she goes, that's because I don't need you anymore. And it was the greatest compliment anybody had ever given me in my life, that they didn't need me anymore. That was the goal. That's the goal that's the goal, that they don't need us anymore. So, excuse me, I left there because it was time and started my own organization called Phoenix Orientum, which I'm working on nonprofit, but I do training. I'm trained to train the trainer by the Ministry of Children and Services here in Canada, and to educate, like, speech to law enforcement. And I've trained the RCMP on the psychology of victims, because they've got to learn to check their bias. Okay. They just see someone selling sex and think whatever it is. I don't want to use those words because I don't like them, what they're thinking, but check your bias, check your bias, check your bias, check your bias. I'm writing a book right now for the survivors for afterwards. What if, because people think you pull them out of trafficking and everything's good. No, no, no. That's when the hard work.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's when the hard work starts. Okay. You're sitting alone in the apartment. You've got nothing, like I did. You're jonesing for the drugs. You're lonely. And you know, if you pick up the phone, they'll come get you. That's why I would get in trouble all the time for taking the 2 and 3 and 4 o'clock phone calls. But I would, because 10 minutes on the phone can stop someone from going back. But what if I go for a job interview and the guy interviewing me was a customer? How am I
Mm.
going to handle that? What if I have children by my trafficker? There's a legal bond there, okay? Now, how do you navigate that? And we see that a lot, okay? And for the men and the boys that, like, I was working with somebody, a gang, and I'm not going to name their name because that's one of the reasons why I'm allowed to still do my work, is because I don't name gangs. Had him since he was 16, okay? And what they do, especially with the men, is they get them to do organized crime. And by that, I mean run guns or run drugs across the country. And so these guys, they're not going to go to the police because now they've been running guns. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so one particular person, I took him with me to the police and we say, this is the situation. Hypothetically, can you offer him any form of immunity? And they said, no. The gangs know this. Okay. These guys are trapped. What they're doing to the men is horrific. There's something called, I don't know how graphic can I be?
It's whatever you feel.
Okay. So with the men, they hold them down on tables and they do something called spooning. And they insert spoons, and then the spoons get larger and larger and larger so they can eventually insert big articles into these men. They give these guys to 10 men at a time, and these men stand in a circle and these guys are on their knees. Now for the men, there's social stigma attached to this. So it's even harder for them to come forward. And there are almost no services for men, almost none. All the services and the counseling and stuff out there that I have been able to find here, at least in Canada, are for women. There's nothing
Mm.
out there for men. So the odds of them being able to get out and to get out whole are very, 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 very difficult and stacked against them. So people will talk about things like, so I'm in college one day. I'll give you an example. I'm walking down the corridor with this young girl and we're talking about prostitution. Because, oh, I would never do that. But pornography, which is actually filmed prostitution. I want to be very clear on this. She goes, I do pornography. That's okay. Not understanding that pornography is forever. We now know that statistically, approximately 80% of all filmed prostitution is human trafficking, which means that when men are masturbating, they are watching an actual rape. Now, I had so many debate this with me, and there's nothing to debate, okay? Saying, I can tell. No, you can't, because if she doesn't act like she's enjoying it, she's going to get hurt. Her life depends on her acting like she's enjoying it. So, no, you cannot tell. So, these men are not only ejaculating to a rape, they're ejaculating to an actual crime scene. And the real big issue around pornography, filmed prostitution, is that it's forever. Even after she's dead, men are watching her being raped. It's forever. And it causes intergenerational trauma. And I'll give you an example. It's the same with OnlyFans. Hypothetically, I've got children, they're in school. And the father of one of my friend's children realizes who I am and that he's actually a subscriber to me or has watched me on pornography. He's going to tell his daughter or his son, you're not going to that house again. And so now my children are being called names in the playground or in the schoolyard because of that. Meanwhile, it's okay for the father to watch it and pay for it if he's even doing that, but not
Mm-hmm.
okay for her to do it. So it's causing intergenerational trauma that doesn't go away. It's labeling children, and we know psychologically through studies and stuff that if you label someone continuously, eventually they're going to say, well, everybody already thinks I'm that. Why not be it? So then these children go on into that world because why not? Everybody already thinks it of me. So where I live, they did a survey in this area because I live on a track. And the only place the children here feel safe at night is in their bedrooms because men are trolling around their homes looking to pick up somebody. How dare your need for momentary pleasure frighten a child that you don't even
Mm-hmm.
know? And the thing is, too, that they're bringing it to our neighborhoods. They're not doing this in their neighborhood. They're lowering our property values. They're bringing all the accompanying crime that goes with it, the drugs, the burglaries, everything that goes with it. And they're destroying neighborhoods and then going home to their place where there's a white picket fence. Now, in Canada, we have our version of what's called the Nordic model. We call it the equality model. And what it is that it's illegal to buy sex, but it's not technically illegal to sell it. And people go, well, that's not fair. Well, actually, it is because it's basic economics. If you end the demand for something, there's no need for supply. And it's the purchasing of sex that causes sex trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
And if they choose not to do it of their own volition, then we have to make it so. So you will be arrested for it. And so I co-facilitated the John School, which is the Sex Buyers Accountability Program, which is a court-mandated diversion program for those who are arrested, first offense, communicating for the purpose. In other words, trying to pick up a prostituted person. And I use the word prostituted because it's a verb. It's not who or what they are. It's something they had to do, are doing, or will have to do. So I call them a prostituted person. And they come, they have to spend, it costs them $300 for the privilege of this diversion program. And they spend the day with us. And we are not vicious with them, but we're firm. And we show them videos and things of how they are socialized because no one is born a purchaser. No one is born a trafficker. We show them videos of how they're socialized to think that we are commodities and that they have the right to sex. And on that note, sex is not a human right. Food, water, air, safety, freedom, and education are human rights. Sex is not even a need, it's a want. You don't even need sex anymore for procreation. So that one, because I heard it all from these guys during the John School, is a no-no. I would hear, variety is the spice of life. I said, well, then use the other hand. Okay. Or I would hear, I'm helping her put food on the table. And I would say, well, so you care about her? Well, yeah. I said, well, why'd you put your dick in her mouth? Why didn't you give her the diapers? Why didn't you give her the food? If you really do care about her. Or I would ask them, I would say, would you drop your mother, aunt, daughter, niece off in a dark alley at 3 a.m. in the morning and drive away with nary another thought to her? And to a man, they would all get offended with me and go, no. I go, well, why'd you do it to her? We had to humanize the women. And therein lies our problem. They are socialized to not see us as human. We are orifices. And that comes back to the whore Madonna complex. The Madonna is at home and the whore is on the street. And they would say, I would ask the whore to do things with her mouth that I would not ask the Madonna, my wife, partner, whatever, at home to do because my wife's mouth kisses my children. But what about my mouth? Does it not kiss my children? Do my children not matter? And here we go into the intergenerational trauma again. And all of this is so that somebody can ejaculate.
Mm-hmm.
I am struggling with this. I am really struggling with this. And unfortunately, there's millions and millions of men who do this. So I've created a partnership. I've got a whole bunch of things going on. But so pornography is now the number one way that people are being trafficked. And in OnlyFans, they're being trafficked too. So what's happening is the traffickers are making the women do OnlyFans as a way of advertising. So they're calling these women models. They're not models, they're trafficking victims. So OnlyFans, pornography, prostitution, and I don't care if it's high end, they're still being trafficked and they're still having to give their orifices up for the sale of something. And my experience in 20 years of doing this work, I have found that it has been white, university educated women who are advocating that it is empowering and for the right for your child to sell their orifices, even though they wouldn't and their child will never have to. And I take issue with that also. Unless you've been there, done that, don't talk to me about it being empowering because it's not. Money is the empowering thing here, and who has the money? So going back to the Nordic model, the equality model, the premise is that if we end the demand by arresting purchasers, there will be no need for supply. People get confused. They think, oh, the traffickers are bad people. Yes, they are. But traffickers would not exist if men weren't buying sex. And yes, some women buy
Exactly.
sex. But yes, some women buy sex, but it's overwhelmingly men. Okay. So they didn't have a problem because what would happen is that the police would arrest the pair and they'd let him go because he's showing his oaths, but she's the issue. She's the harlot, the deviant, and now that they are being held accountable, it's a problem. It's a big problem because they will not be able to cross a border if they are convicted of a second offense because the Crown comes in during the John School and talks to them about the ramifications of recidivism. The health unit comes in and shows them graphic photos of what a sick penis looks like because many of these men do not want to use condoms and the trafficker will not allow her to force it. Then I get up and talk. I love it. But my favorite part is, so the John stings, they don't do like 20 at once. They'll have a John sting today and then another one maybe a week from now, another one for a couple of months. So we'll get these guys in the room and some of them, their arrest will have been 6 months prior. And the police will walk in and they'll look at the first guy and they'll go, now, sir, why are you here today? And the guy will go, well, I was trying to pick up a hitchhiker. And the cop will go, sir, I'm the man that arrested you. Can you please tell me again why you're here today? By the time they get to the second guy, they're all telling the truth. Okay. This is my favorite part. Okay. But they spend the day with us and we're very clear that we know they weren't born buying. We are aware that they're socialized that way, but it's time that they recognize that themselves and they must cease and desist instantly. And over 15 years of doing it, without a doubt, without fail, at the end of every single one, I would get at least one guy, often with tears in his eyes, saying, I'm sorry, I didn't know. And I appreciate that. But I would say, I know that we don't know what we don't know. And I get that when we know better, we do better. But what I don't understand is why you didn't know. You have a mother, you have a sister, you have a daughter. Why didn't you know? So yeah, we give them an out, but we don't give them an out. I appreciate your genuineness and stuff, but I also want you to figure out why you didn't know. Why these other women didn't matter to you, or these other boys didn't matter to you. Why? What is it within you that allowed that to ferment? I want to leave this with all doom and gloom. There is hope. There is hope. Like the world is starting becoming aware of this, more aware of this, and unfortunately, as we're becoming more aware, it's exploding, okay? North America is the number one creator of demand for child exploitation videos. And there's no such thing as child pornography. That's legitimizing it. It is child rape or child exploitation material, okay? And North America is the number one creator of demand for it. Excuse me. And these men from around the world, but primarily North America, are going to countries like Thailand and Cambodia, sex tourism, okay? And not only are they harming children, but they're also making children. They're leaving women and girls pregnant behind them when they come back. So we're talking about the intergenerational trauma again, okay? There are all these children being born from rapes. I saw a headline in an article, Daddy, do you ever think about me? Daddy, do you even know I exist? And they don't. And even if they did, they didn't care because they're in another country. And if they go back, they're never going to see her again because they don't even remember who she is. So the intergenerational trauma, people don't think about it. And it's all so that a man can ejaculate. Please make this make sense to me. It doesn't to me. But anyways, so I've partnered with a woman called Sandra Wuruntu, and she was on President Obama's Human Trafficking Task Force. And we did training with Philippine police and social workers. I am now on the Philippine Human Trafficking Task Force, and we are creating a comic book right now. If I can send you the link at some point, that'd be great. We're raising
Yeah,
funds to make
please do.
Okay, we're raising funds to make this comic book, and it's from 7 years up, and it's going to the Philippines and those countries because those children, because of the demand for child exploitation, are at such risk. I mean, Jakarta is a city of 40 million people. You can imagine the poverty. There's children there that whose parents are trafficking them because they don't have food. It doesn't make it okay. But so I will be going in September next year to Jakarta, West Java, Bali, then Australia, taking this comic book and training. I'll be training a hospital also in Indonesia. And yeah, so there's a lot of things going on. So another thing that we're finding is that because of the abuse and the drugs that are forced to take, many of the trafficking victims are losing their teeth. I'm losing teeth now from that time. So I've partnered with an organization called the Seroptimists, and they are the female version of the optimists. And we are creating a campaign called Regain Her Smile. So we're going to be partnering and raising funds with dentists so that we can give these trafficking victims back their teeth. Because your confidence, everything is in your smile. How do you go forward if you're not confident with the way you look? And of course, there's the bias again. People look at somebody with no teeth and think junkie. Meanwhile, there's a story behind it. I keep going on and on about check your bias, check your bias. I'm the girl you would have walked into maybe McDonald's with my leg in the sink shaving because I was homeless and I had to go to the bar. Check your bias. I didn't choose. I remember one night I'm dancing for a guy, he's about 30, and he starts crying, and I'm like, okay, I'll bite. What's the matter? I'm 30 and my life just didn't turn out the way I wanted. And I got angry. I smacked him on the shoulder and I said, hey, do you think that when I was 6, I thought I'm going to grow up and be a stripper? The guy looked at me and went, you knew about stripping when you were 6? At which point I felt sorry for him, okay? But check your bias. Check your bias. There's a story behind every one of us. There's a story behind every person you meet, no matter what that story is. There's a story. And when you see somebody doing drugs, that's another thing too. The hospitals, hopefully we're making headway there because somebody will come in and all the emergency room doctor sees is a junkie. Meanwhile, it's a trafficking victim, and they're in real pain. They've got a broken arm because the trafficker broke it, or they've got to have to be stitched back up. Their anus has to be stitched back up. And all that's happening is they're being judged. And people are thinking junkie. No, check your bias. There's more to the story. Bother, make the effort, take the time to look into it. When you go into emergency, if the trafficker or guardian is with the person and the doctor says you got to step outside, it's just a curtain. They can hear everything. So what we've done is we've created flashcards that are plastic laminated, and on the front it'll ask a couple of questions, on the back is yes or no. So they just point. And so they can't be heard communicating. But that's assuming the person feels safe enough to do it. So that means that we have to build rapport. We have to be consistent. We have to be honest. We have to be not judgmental and unbiased. And they have to be aware that you are like that. You have to mean it. You have to show it. So everything is about training, but ideally, we don't have to have this training because men aren't buying sex anymore. If we can stop this, and this is not going into labor trafficking, this is not going into forced marriage, or forced marriage is a part of that, but it's not going into child soldiers or organ trafficking or bonded labor or indentured servitude. I mean, there's lots of kinds of trafficking, but
Exactly.
I'm focusing on sex trafficking, and it can be stopped. It can be stopped, but men have to step up to the plate, stand up and be counted. And that includes the rape culture, and that includes not allowing the locker room talk. I tell the men, you have to say, you know what, that's not funny. And yes, you're going to get pushback, but imagine the pushback we've had for centuries and generations fighting it. It's your turn. Stand up and be counted. Stand up and be counted. And I don't want to say man up because what's a man, right? Stand up and be counted. It's your turn. So yeah, is this kind of what you wanted, what you needed?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Tell us about your book and when is it coming out?
So the book is coming along, but a year ago, my building burnt down and I became homeless for 2 months, and I was living out of my car, -20 with no heat. So it set me back a year. So I'm looking at probably a year because the book isn't just me. It's a book anybody can pick up in anywhere. It's not chronological. You can pick it up and there's a quote from somebody who was trafficked. There's bits all over. So because being able to concentrate for any length of time is hard for somebody just out. So they don't have to concentrate on this book. They can pick it up anywhere and it'll have a gem in it, a piece of wisdom that they can cling to, and it will give them guidance in areas that they don't know. Because how can you know if you've never been there? And so it's not just my book, it's other survivors too who are putting it into it and stuff that you can't see coming. You cannot foresee it until you've been there. So the book, it's probably going to be called I Cried, but it's probably about a year
Okay.
because I got a setback. So yeah.
Well, keep us posted on it, and whenever it comes out, let me know. I'll get the word out.
I appreciate you so much. And of course, I got the Facebook page, right? It's now
Hmm.
almost 23,000 members. And Facebook just told me that it's got over 10 million views. And
Wow.
one of the really good things about the page, and I don't talk about this a lot, is that because I've traveled extensively, I know people all over the world. I get people reaching out to me from different countries saying they're being trafficked. So I've managed to pull people out in Cambodia, Myanmar, South Africa, Puerto Rico, all across the states. Alaska, I'll give you an example. A woman messaged me from Alaska and he just pistol whipped her and broke her jaw so she couldn't talk. She said she woke up in this hotel room and didn't know where she was.
Hmm.
So I said, okay, let's start. Look outside the window. What do you see? And she said she saw snow. And eventually we worked it out that he had brought her from Nevada to Alaska. But because I know people, I was able to get her on a plane 6 hours later back to Nevada. But his people found her there. So then we got her on another plane back to California, and I lost track of her there. But the page it's an educational page, okay? And so you'll see it's not just about trafficking, it's about mindset and culture, because it's the mindset and culture that makes this behavior acceptable. So why does trafficking happen? Because of mindset and culture. So we got to educate people on what that looks like and how it happens. So the page is working. The page is working.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us the name of the group or the page where we can find it.
It's on Facebook and it's called Human Trafficking Awareness No Traffic Zone. I can send a link to. I think maybe you know the link, but yeah. So I will.
Yeah.
There is one rule on that page. You cannot denigrate survivors, and you cannot argue with survivors because they are the experts. If somebody wants to say, like just the other day, this guy goes, "Well, with all due respect, I disagree." Well, you can't disagree because you don't know what you're talking about, and that person does, and
Hmm.
it's not tolerated. It's a safe space. I have at least 1,000 survivors on the page. Many of them are Epstein survivors. I will not allow somebody to come on that page and make it a non-safe space. It is a safe space for survivors. You want to come and be educated, you are very welcome, and we love you for it. But if you want to come and tell us how it is, you're not going to last on that page because that's not how it works.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, send me a link to that, and I'll include that in the
Okay.
show notes.
Thank you. And I will send you the link for the Reclaim Her Smile and the
Hmm.
Soar Optimist. Yeah, please and thank you so much.
Oh,
I
thank you,
appreciate you.
and thank you for everything you do for the survivors.
Well, thank you you're doing it too, right? So yeah, you're doing it too.
Well, I
Yeah.
try, but it's nowhere near what you're doing.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. But thank you for that. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, that's it for our show for today. Hope you learned something that will perhaps protect you and a family member. Follow me on Facebook. Go to my website, davidjstory.com, to learn more about the Omega book series, my podcast, and my blogs. And always remember, always watch your six and others too.